Hey guys, a friend stopped by this afternoon and dropped off another TV for me. He actually called me a few days ago and tipped me off that he had gotten it. I had seen this some time ago on eBay, and I'd mentioned to him that I kind of like it, but it was in Northwest Indiana and I didn't really like it so much that I was going to go over there and get it. But he got some other stuff from the same seller, which I guess is like a consignment deal. So they actually have a lot of stuff for sale. I guess it's a big warehouse. He was able to talk him down a little bit, and here it is. Now, I was a little put off by the photos on eBay, but it didn't cost that much. The cabinet's in decent shape. It's got all the knobs. It's got the back, but it's rusty inside. It even says it's a fresh barn find in the eBay listing. But what I like about it in particular is it's wood. I've got plenty of Admiral sets, but most of my tabletop sets are Bakelite, and this one's wood. The only other wood tabletop Admiral I've got is a little 7-inch guy. I thought this was a 10-inch because I've got a couple 10-inch Bakelite tabletops. This is actually a 12-inch, and I like the wood down here. Sorry, I know the lighting's bad. It's, I think, a photo finish. Yeah, I'm sure it is. And it's a little crazed, but it's in decent condition. There is a console version of this I've seen a few times where it's got like a wicker basket weave speaker grill on it. But this tabletop version, I think I've only seen ever one for sale, and that was quite some time ago. Now, you may have noticed there's something very bad looking about this CRT. And I'm pretty sure it did not, in fact I know it didn't look like this in the eBay photos. That's the internal antenna lead hanging down there, but it sure looks to me like this thing got necked and lost its vacuum, and the inrushing air blew the phosphor off the face of the CRT. So I don't know, I think he said it was like that when he got it, but I don't know. It may have happened when he transported it. So, I already went ahead and popped the back off, and I've actually got to put some navel jelly on this because it's just so nasty and rusty, and there's probably some kind of animal droppings on it. And here is the inside, which is pretty nasty too. You can see all that rust. So, I'm not thrilled. If I had a spare chassis, I would take this one out and put another one in. It's also missing the high voltage cage cover. You can run the set without it, but it'd be nice to have it. It would cut down on interference. I suppose I could just fabricate one. It's just a piece of sheet metal bent into an L. No big deal. But aside from it being disgusting and rusty, it's all here, as near as I can tell. I mean, all the tubes are there, and all the key components are there. Just kind of nasty. Now, as far as the picture tube goes, that's the main thing I want to do in this video, is get this chassis out and better assess things. Hopefully I won't find any critter nests or anything. I don't see any evidence so far, but that doesn't mean there isn't. Typically they'd be down there like under the CRT, they get in under the chassis, but this one is kind of well protected. It's just got some vent holes, it's got a metal screen up front, and it's got a mesh over the bottom, so mice might not have even been able to get inside of this. I don't know. Now, as far as the CRT goes, I've already examined the neck, and it's not broken off here. And that could be cracked anywhere in here or on the base. I just can't tell at this point. Now, maybe that stuff on the front is just mold or mildew or something. I can't tell if it's on the surface of the glass or inside the glass. Worst case scenario, I do have some spare 12-inch picture tubes. In particular, there's a guy on Craigslist who was selling 4 or 5 and some chassis, and I picked them up from him. Turns out most of the CRTs were bad, but I think there was a 12 LP4 in the mix that was okay. Not great, but okay. I could put that in this set. Alright, so next up, I'm going to get a towel or something to put on my floor so I can tip this set over, because I need to get the bolts out from under the chassis. Here's a speaker. It's a little baby field coil speaker used to filter the power supply. And I noticed one of the wires is cut for the field coil. So hopefully that won't be an issue. And turns out I can get a peek inside without having to pull the chassis out after all. And I'm happy to say it actually looks very clean inside there. So you see me working on Admirals that are dual chassis. This is from the same era, 4849, but to make this smaller and fit all into one chassis, they cut a couple corners. One, they mount the power transformer up here and put the rectifier right into it. And there's one less video IF stage, no DC restoration, and a few other simplifications, but decent enough. Decent enough. Alright, so uncommonly, all 4 bolts are here. Usually there's at least a few missing, so grab a wrench and get those out. Model number is worn off, but I think it's a 20X145 or something like that. There's a tube lineup. Oh, another reason they were able to make this smaller is they use a couple 12AU7s, dual triodes. Whereas in the dual chassis sets, I think all the tubes are just single element. There are no 12AU7s in it. Oh yeah, that is most definitely on the inside of the glass. So, be tossing this CRT. Yeah, it was the original too. But well, cabinet's not too bad inside, but it's kind of stinky, so I think I'll wipe it down with some bleach and then maybe put some shellac over it to seal in the stink. As for the chassis, so I'm sure it's rusty, and I'll got the naval jelly and work on that. Well, it's actually not too horrible though. I mean, there are, areas, significant areas where there's no corrosion. The transformer looks alright. Yeah, we got some down there, spots here and there, but, and it's pretty nasty down in there, but whatever. Not the end of the world. I was having trouble getting the CRT out because the yoke seems to have shrunk a little bit around the neck, so I decided to go ahead and put it out of its misery. I mean, there's no way that this thing could have been used with all that phosphor damage in the front. And I did not find any obvious cracks anywhere. I mean, other than the ones that I just made by whacking the neck. So I guess we'll just never know what happened to this thing. And if you're wondering how I broke it, I just threw a towel over the neck and just tapped it with a hammer, and that was that. I think it had already lost its vacuum because there was no whoosh or implosion or anything. Oh, so, well, it's a lot lighter and easier to work on. So I'll tip this on its side. Let's take a look underneath. Okay, so other than being stinky, it's actually in pretty darn good shape. I did have a junker Admiral chassis, very similar. There's a 20Y one. I scrapped out a 20X one, so I do have some spare parts if I need them. Might be a little evidence of something getting gnawed on that capacitor coating. Hopefully the transformers are okay. Some nasty corrosion around the edges of the chassis. Don't know if this was ever worked on. I think that's all original. That might be a replacement, but I've seen that white Elmenko in a few Admiral sets, so that might be the original. Alright, so while I got this out, I think I'll at least tackle some of the corrosion. I can just put this on the side and periodically apply naval jelly or whatever while I get back to working on other projects. I decided the first thing I had to do in restoring this set was to wash down the chassis. It was stinky and nasty. probably because some critters had urinated, defecated, or both on this thing over the years. Now, I've seen worse, and I didn't really find any evidence of bedding, but just from kind of the rust patterns and the odor, I've kind of seen that before, and sets that definitely had critters living in them, so I figured that's what it was. So I wanted to disinfect and wash this thing down, so pulled out all the tubes. Of course, the picture tube I already broke and removed, and I took the high voltage cover off, and then I sprayed it down good with Spray 9, which is a pretty potent cleaner and disinfectant. And then I hosed it down, both top, all the sides, and underneath the chassis. Now, if you're thinking, isn't it horrible to mix electronics and water? Yeah, but not if you dry it out good. I mean, you may have seen guys take like modern PC keyboards and throw them in the dishwasher. So long as you dry things out so it doesn't sit and cause corrosion, really not a problem. And of course, we've already got corrosion here, so that's only be a matter of making the corrosion worse. And really, most of these old components can take it, like the flyback's already encased in wax, and all the old caps are waxed too. Of course, they'll be getting replaced anyway, so it's kind of irrelevant. Really, the main thing to be concerned about is water, like getting down inside the tube sockets and the controls, where it could definitely corrode. So after I hosed it down, I let it sit out in the sun and dry out for a while, and now I'm going to take a heat gun and go over it a bit. If it was smaller, I might put it in the oven. I know guys have done that with radio chassis, but this is a little too big for that. Plus, even on the lowest setting, I'm a little bit concerned about the wax heating up and deforming like on the flyback. Although I suppose I could mount the flyback and then put it in the oven, but I don't think I need to go quite that far. So it's actually already rather dry as it is, at least on the top side. Also started to chip away and apply some rust remover here and there just to see how bad things really were. Like I worked in this area, and it's actually not that bad. I've certainly seen worse, like my Brunswick 5KR, which had very, very deep pitting. This really, it looked worse than I think it actually is. And then there's various spots of rust all scattered around, but the bulk of the chassis actually isn't that bad. Especially down in here, the tuner and the IF, which would be the biggest area of concern. That tuner is actually nice and shiny now. And sure, down in here, but that's just a big area of sheet metal, so no real concern there. And that's probably the worst down in there. When I really get into removing the rust, I will disconnect and unmount the flyback so I can get down in there. And I'll take this cap out as well. It'll allow me to really get in there. And I will end up unmounting this entire assembly. There's really just two big screws, one on either side. You loosen those up and you can slide this back and forth. It's meant to adjust it so that the yoke fits up tight against the CRT. So I think they use this, in fact, I know they use the same chassis in both 10 and 12 inch sets, and maybe some 16s as well. So those were meant to be adjustable and interchangeable, because the 10 and 12s would have different heights, and the 16s, whatever. So you just need to disconnect some wires. There'll be 2 for the focus electromagnet and 4 for the yoke. And the whole thing comes off. Now, if you're wondering what this doohickey is, this is for centering the picture. I'm not really sure why there's a large disc here that's spring mounted, or why there's a thumb screw here. But the basic idea is it's like a gimbal assembly here, so you can go left and right on this screw here, and you can go up and down on these screws here. So this actually you can get this from the back of the set, and the chassis is installed in the cabinet, and do a little bit of this action. Other chassis like the 30A1s you've seen me restore, they have 4 large bolts with springs on them, and you would tighten or loosen each of those 4 screws to achieve the same thing. This is a lot more convenient. So later models, I switched to this arrangement. This, I'm not really sure why it's here. If you loosen this up, it lets you do this. Maybe it was to accommodate different cabinets. So if it was in a cabinet that was really deep, you could attach this here, and this would stick out further, I guess. And why is it spring-loaded? Maybe this was supposed to push up tight against the back of the cabinet. Yeah, that's probably why. This would push up tight against the back of the cabinet, which would resist motion. So you'd really have to fight with this thing. Now this one is so corroded, and it's pretty seized up. So you really got to apply some force. So it's not the kind of thing that would shift out of alignment on its own. All right, so I'll skip over all the boring stuff. So there'll be days or maybe a few weeks of me drying this out and derustifying it and that, and I'll pick up when I actually start to do some of the electrical stuff, like maybe I should test that transformer sooner than later, but definitely want to dry it out good before I do that. And likewise, test the flyback and so on. But I certainly won't bore you with the rust removal.